So first of all, I would like to start by thanking Nidhi and everyone involved in inviting me to talk about this subject, which is very dear to my heart.
So I was requesting if you can please share from your own experience, both as a practitioner and as a teacher, how Iyengar yoga has supported you or your students through moments of emotional or psychological challenge. Since I know your country is going through huge challenge.
Yes. So allow me to start by my own personal story. And I must say that even before coming to yoga, I was surrounded by the problematic situation in Israel. So during my school years, buses were blowing up on our way to school, on our way back home. The streets were never really safe, and we got used to seeing armed men, whether police or soldiers, on the streets constantly. So I got used to the idea that before entering a shopping mall, there will be a gunned man for protection. And I'm saying this just to set the stage that I will talk about the events of October 7th, but even before, there are decades of insecurity in Jerusalem. And in that environment, I began practicing yoga at a very young age. And I recall several times when I came to class just after a terror attack. And it can be something that happened a few streets away from me. It can be an event that I wasn't injured physically, but I was part of. And yoga was always something very consistent. So, what do I do now is something that people ask after a shocking event, after a traumatic event. And for me, the answer was always now I go to class, whether to teach or to practice a class with my teacher. If I'm a practitioner, I would tell my teacher, this happened to me and I'm in shock, or I don't know what to do now. And she would instruct me. And when it was my students and they told me what they went through, it could be a shooting event that they just had to make a U turn and drive the other way. And that's the reason why they were late to class. So it would start by, I'm sorry, I'm late to class. This and that happened. And of course, that was much important than the fact that they were late to class. I'm having nightmares because of this and that. And then, of course, there is a lot of loss around us. So until now, I spoke about the survivors of such horrible events and the everyday lives that we are having, living in such insecurity. But there are also people who got injured on their way to class and couldn't come and then couldn't attend for some time because they needed surgery and recovery and so on. So that's the climate here. And I feel that I have been teaching, in a sense, what today we call trauma informed yoga or trauma sensitive yoga, before this terminology was there. And before, of course, the events of October the 7th, 2023. And the reason I feel confident to say so is because I don't believe that in Iyengar yoga we need a new department to be called yoga for trauma. I believe that since Iyengar yoga has sensitivity in it and it has the methodology of adapting to whoever is standing in front of us, what are the needs of the student? We are listening to the needs. We are taking care of the student. And therefore, if the student has gone through trauma, then the adaptations will be to trauma. If it's physical, if it's mental, if it's anxiety, if it's depression, if it's fear, what happened on the 7th was a national shock for everyone in Israel and I believe for others abroad. The atrocities of October the 7th, 2023, are beyond anything one can imagine. I think it's the pure horror and evilness that came out of people that day. And it affected everyone in it. And for me, I felt like I couldn't move and I couldn't breathe. My husband was called to serve the same day. And the next day, I found myself asking, what am I to do now? I have an older mother to take care of and a younger child. And everything stopped in Israel. There was a huge shock. And my teacher told me, I'm doing a Zoom class, join us. And she opened for all a Zoom class. And I said, I cannot attend. I cannot move and I cannot breathe. And my mother told me, you have to do it. So I joined the class. I don't remember many things she said. I don't remember all of the class, but I do remember that I felt like I can breathe after 90 minutes of practice. And then the next day she said, we are meeting again on Zoom. And I said, okay, you're saying that I have to attend, I'm attending. And after the second class, this was October the 9th, I felt like my body could move again. So after that, I began teaching myself. I admit that in the first days, I couldn't do anything. I was completely paralyzed. We were instructed to close the doors, the windows, not to go outside. It was very bad here. But then I started teaching on Zoom, and my students told me the same thing that I went through. They said, I cannot attend. I cannot think of anything. I cannot move. I cannot breathe. And I said, that's why you have to come. And the classes were, I could say, softer than usual. They were slower, and the instructions were very basic, what we could say instructions for beginners. And it was about regaining the sense of the body, feeling ourselves in the present. It was not about try to breathe and try to move. It was about Tadasana, feel the feet, feel the fact that you are standing. It was a lot of wall work just to feel more security. And people were exhausted because of all this shock. So there was also a big part of resting. And it helped. And I got a lot of messages from my students that it really helped. And then we had another class and I kept on teaching and I kept on practicing. I mean, after those Zoom sessions with my teacher, I felt like I can really practice and not just go into postures as if I am practicing, like technically doing things, but my mind was not there. My mind slowly came back to the body. It came back to the breath. It came back to feeling. There is a lot of fear of feeling because how can you feel so much? So there is some numbness to it in the beginning. And I cannot really say when we got back to normal because since October 7th, 2023, we had more and more phases of this war coming towards us. So there was the phase when people went back to work, but there was this phase when a war started from the north. So many people were evacuated from their houses, and Jerusalem was filled with people evacuated from their houses, and also Tel Aviv and so many hotels in Israel. And slowly there was an understanding that there are so many survivors from that horrible day that need attention. So inside the yogi community, there was this understanding that we have to address. And it started with the survivors of the parties that were down south on the 7th. There's a huge community of party goers who are practicing yoga. So inside Iyengar Yoga, there was this collaboration with Natal, the national trauma survivors. And they started teaching people who survived the parties, and then the parents of the survivors of the parties, and then wives of reserves, and then reserves. And now it has grown so much that there are yoga teachers going to the survivors of the kibbutz, of the settlements that were directly attacked and brutally destroyed on the southern. So Iyengar Yoga has a great role right now in recovering and helping people in Israel since then. So there were shifts in the Israeli society since then, going back to work, having this routine under war, and then at the same time understanding that something horrible happened, that we have to start treating ourselves. And then there was another war, and fear of war, and maybe now it will end. Something else horrible happened. And then the people who came back from Gaza, the hostages, they started talking. And that reflected on the people who are still there and are still currently there. We know about 20 hostages that are kept alive, I hope, in Gaza currently. So it's a living nightmare. But, even in the phrase living nightmare, there is life in it. So we have to live side by side to whatever is happening. And yoga is the anchor in times of grief, times of uncertainty, and also emotional exhaustion. And I don't know if you would like me to talk about the practice and how that helps, or just very generally of how yoga and this situation corresponds. But it is a very challenging time. And I really feel that yoga helps people. Reserves told me that nightmares stopped. Reserves told me that finally they can sleep after 1.5 of the year that they could not sleep. Wives of reserves tell me that they don't yell at their children so much, out of helplessness, that they feel better. So many diseases came up this time. High blood pressure for a 25-year-old mother. And someone 30 years old came to me and she said, "Oh, I lost 50 kg in 1 year, but everything is fine. I'm fine." And that's also something that comes up. Whoever is injured and whoever went through something horrible, they always think about others that went through something more difficult than them. And therefore, they feel just fine. And we have to work with that defensive mechanism, respect it, that they want to feel fine. And then through yoga, they can slowly feel what is also not fine when they are ready. And that works very, very deeply. One sentence that people keep on telling me is that I wait all week to my yoga class to breathe, and only here I can breathe. Or wives of reserves tell me, only in class I feel like someone really sees me. You know, did I answer your question? I'm not sure now.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it just gave goosebumps hearing about it. Yes, and you asked the question of whether you should go into the poses. I think that will also be interesting to hear what exactly you did with them. So I think that will kind of combine with the next question that we have. Given the current situation in Israel, how has your teaching adapted to meet the needs of the students, especially partners of active soldiers, which you were talking about, those who are living with ongoing stress and trauma, and what challenges and insights have emerged from this context? I think a bit of it you've already answered.
I didn't realize the first question was very generally about emotional
Yes, yes,
stability.
yes.
I think we are just beyond that. We are beyond depression and anxiety, and we are so much deep in grief, in national grief, that it was, I'm sorry, difficult for me to answer. But I will say very briefly that Iyengar Yoga is so well equipped treating people with depression and anxiety. There is vast research by Marla Apt from the United States, who has done great research about it. And I think everything is in the teachings of Guruji. Everything is already there. So we can turn to science, and there are more and more researchers even about Iyengar Yoga and PTSD. And there is about Iyengar Yoga and depression and so on. But it's so clear that Iyengar Yoga works on the emotional level as well. It's just one of the koshas that we have, right? So Yeah, I have to say that as well. And yeah, in Idan from Israel is also part of a research. She's looking into the effects of 10 Iyengar yoga classes for wives of reserves. They have, the groups have had questionnaires before starting the practice of Iyengar yoga. And then afterwards, most of them have never practiced yoga before, some have. And the results are striking. I mean, it's so clear that it helps them so many levels. So I'm hoping to see that research published soon. So how it affected my students? It affected all of my students. It affected those who, for the past almost 2 years, have been telling me, I'm fine. It's not touching me. I don't feel it. I don't know anyone who was injured. I mean, that's one end of the scale. And I have students like that. And then you realize they changed their jobs, they are moving to live in a different city. I mean, on the surface, they don't feel how it affected them, but on an inner level, it made them make huge life decisions. There are those who are leaving Israel to live elsewhere for a short time or for a long term. And there are those who are constantly affected, fathers to soldiers, grandmothers and grandfathers for soldiers, but even those who have lived through a war in Israel as soldiers are having flashbacks since then. So many people are talking about flashbacks and nightmares. So think about a 70-year-old man going to sleep. And in his dreams, he's an 18-year-old fighting a war. That's quite horrible. So that's something that occurs quite a lot. And unfortunately, Israel is so small that whenever something happens, you know somehow that person. There was someone on my street who passed away, so the son of a neighbor. And there are so many cycles in Israel that you know people from school and you know people from work and you know people from college and so on. So uh, you know the people who are involved and it's terrible. I think about the last Iran war that it affected all of us because every time a rocket fell somewhere, there were so many WhatsApp messages, phone calls, making sure everyone is okay. And I got notified which Iyengar yoga teacher lost their houses, which one also only had a damaged house, so they cannot return to, which one can return to their houses, but since they don't have a safe space and they're pregnant and so on, so they won't return to their houses for the meantime. Yoga teachers said, I lost everything. Can someone lend me yoga props to practice? I mean, that's the way you come back to life. It's not the clothes, right? It's the wooden block. You don't have nothing. You need your wooden block. My props are in my safe room, so they will survive.
Wow.
So you were asking also about the sequence then. Because there are these fluctuations in our lives, it really depends. Are students coming to class after a night that they spent in the shelters because of bombs? Then everyone is very tired and agitated. Or is the class happening in a time when hostages came home and you are a bit relieved? Or even happy, or you hear that some support is coming from somewhere, or in a way, nothing horrible happened for the last 2 weeks, and you get this false sense of stability in your routine. And then you feel when you are not that exhausted and you feel a bit more hopeful, then you can practice in a different way. So, very generally, standing postures are great. Standing postures, but I would have to say the simple standing postures that don't exhaust us and using prop support is also very important. The wall is very important. Wooden blocks, chairs are very helpful just to help people feel the ground around them, to feel the support, to feel where is my foot, where is my hand, where is my head. I used to do a lot with head support as well to kind of calm the nerves. So when there is supported standing postures, when things are a bit better.
Okay.
I did try Drikshasana with the back against the wall because that is for students who are not new to Iyengar yoga. It's not that of the challenge. We could also do it facing the wall. That also gave a lot of quietness. Is very important. Uttanasana, feet apart. I don't recall, maybe once or twice we practiced for this whole time. Uttanasana, feet together, needed to feel more stability. And yes, I think Parivita Trikonasana came in a bit later. So it didn't come right after the shock. We needed time for that. Virabhadrasana 1 came much later. And I think Virabhadrasana 3 was integrated uh, halfway with the hands on the wall, with the hands on the floor, just lifting one leg. It wasn't about going into the classical pose. But when people are very tired, I didn't start there. And I also didn't start by lying on the back. So we started sitting sometimes in Vajrasana or Virasana with knees together. And then a lot of arm work, Ulyasana. We could do Gomukhasana, that was very helpful. And after some time, Garudasana, hands. And then we could do, and then we felt, okay, Uttanasana, we can come up to stand. So sometimes before standing up, we had to start somewhere else. But it also depends. Not only is the class is tired or not, teacher is also tired, I have to say. It's not only that, but also if the practitioners are, let's say, seasoned practitioners, or if they practice at home, or if they are older, we had to take all this into considerations, like in every class. But then there was this part of how are they, and then how can we adapt the practice. Inversions were always there. Even if just Prasarita Padottanasana as an inversion, then I would suggest that the head would be supported. Now, I'm saying that because there was less of demand from students this time. So I would request, but usually suggest. And I would tell my students, be more attentive to yourself. Don't do your usual Ardha Chandrasana. Don't exhaust yourself because you're not the same as usual as from before. So we had to relearn our powers as well. And we had to learn how to practice. I would tell them, not don't do 100%, do 90%, or don't do your maximum, do your optimum. Do something that preserves your energy. Don't waste it, in a sense, on the postures. And there was also less demand. I'm sorry, Jawahir is here and he will hear me. There was less demand on alignment as well. So their mind was so scattered that it was more about be here and breathe. Open your eyes. And it was less about always insisting on lifting the kneecaps. Of course, I would say if there are knee injuries, if the pose were such and such, then yes, that's about security. But it was less about the exact alignment of the postures and more about coming to class, which was very difficult for many of them most of the time. And then doing the whole class, that's another thing that was difficult, 90 minutes. So I saw many of them after 30 minutes getting very, very tired. And then sometimes we would stop with hands on the wall, which helped us to get to sleep. Oh, that's a question from the chat. I don't know if you want me to answer now or later.
So
I
that
could
was
say very
interesting. You
briefly.
said no supine poses. I think it must be coming from there that if you're saying they're tired and then you say no supine poses. So I think that would.
Okay. It's not that we didn't. I mean, Sana was there, but not to begin with. And in the inversions, of course, we had some form of Shirshasana, even if we would do half, if not the full pose. So there was Sana with different supports and sometimes wider legs as well to calm the nervous system more. And yes, there was usually some restorative posture towards the end, but we could rest in sitting in Virasana, let's say. That's a form of rest after standing postures. And then we would go back to maybe Adho Mukha Svanasana and then do another standing posture and then go back to sitting. Sitting postures were very important, although not the forward bend so much. Upavishta Konasana was very good. So there are sitting postures. What would we do when someone had problems to sleep? The thing is with sleep is that you are exhausted, but when you lie on your bed and you try to fall asleep, you cannot. So that was not physical tiredness only, but mental fatigue. And for mental fatigue, what you need to do, as I understand Guruji's teachings, is that it's accumulated energy in the body that didn't find its way out. And then you need to spread. And sometimes you need to move. So there was a lot of spreading of the hands, of the legs, of reaching up, asana, so lying on the back and stretching, a lot of opening like that. But taking people who are very anxious and telling them to lie on your back, that's not always helpful. Even though they feel the floor, I mean, you can help them with verbal cues and instructions. Feel the floor is steady, and so on. But I feel like my students needed to stand. They needed the eye contact. They needed to feel able to move, to hold themselves. So standing postures give you that sense of security, stability, and agency that you don't get from lying on the back. Now, sometimes we would do some preparation, supine, and then standing up if the body was very, very closed. I mean, after 2 weeks that teaching Zoom lately because of the Iran war, I met my students and they were all just closed up. I mean, they did practice, but it wasn't enough. They needed daily practice. And they were all so closed. So we had to slowly start opening very gently. Um, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It couldn't have been easy to get your students to class after this. I mean, people think they've gone through trauma. How can I come to a yoga class?
You mean after the Iran war or
Yes.
after October 7th?
Yeah, after the whole situation or when they go through a traumatic period.
I felt like there are two kinds of approaches. One approach was yoga is my hobby. It's what I do in my free time. It's what I do when I'm happy. It's an extra thing in my life, like shopping, like going to a cafe. And then when something horrible happens, I let it go. And I got maybe two messages that this is not the time for yoga.
Oh.
And all of the other students said, this is the time we need yoga the most. Yoga is essential. Yoga is what helps us to live. As I said, breathe and move. Yoga is what connects me to myself. So it's not about a disconnect and having fun. It's about connecting to the truth inside. Abhinivesha is always there, whether you go through the trauma or not. Grief is always around us. And the uncertainty of life or death is always there. Now it got really close. But I always talk about Apinivesha in my classes. When you try to go up into Shirshasana, what do you feel? You're going to die, but your head is on the floor. So what are you afraid of? You're afraid to die. And in Vrikshasana, I feel this as well. Some people are just afraid to die. Now, we meet this fear constantly in our practice. Now we meet it outside of the practice. Well, in practice, we get the tools of how to live through it or with it or side by side to it. Because I always tell my students, I can't give you certainty and I cannot bring peace on earth. But maybe we can together find some peace of mind, and that's already a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Been enlightening. Yeah, Nidhi,
Yeah. Yeah. So Aggie, this is kind of not too related. I mean, it's little lesser than, you've been talking about trauma and, worse cases. But we have received some questions. Many women have asked, how do they address anxiety, mood swings, sleep issues, pre-menopause, post-menopause. So, what would your advice be to, using yoga as a tool for managing stress and anxiety, especially when you talked about Guruji's principles, which emphasizes on alignment, sequencing, timing. So, in your experience, how do these principles, how do they support uh, practitioners, especially the new ones, would be facing, such issues?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Is this especially about women?
Mostly, yes. A lot of women have asked about, mood swings and anxiety and sleep issues post menopause or during the process of menopause or even pre-menopause.
Okay. Because I got a lot of questions about menstruation since our situation, menstruation stopped. I got a lot of reports about menstruation being overflowing after October the 7th, kind of our womb was grieving the situation. So I'm just giving this as an example that the woman's body is affected. Hormones are affected by anxiety and you said mood swings. There is this wonderful sequence by Guruji of mental stability, emotional stability in Light on Life, which I recommend every practitioner should know about. And well, Gita Ji's book, Yoga Jump for Women, has a lot in it for menopause. And I believe that every woman should know these sequences even before reaching menopause because we are going through hormonal shifts, even in our normal cycles, if there is such a thing, a normal cycle. And we go through the premenstrual syndrome sometimes. We get agitated. I got very sad since the last 2 years. I don't remember being sad before menstruation each time, but some people get very anxious or angry or easily agitated. And then there are postures that can help to, let's say, reduce the heat in Ayurvedic terms, or maybe it's even yogic terms, to reduce the heat and spread the heat in the body to let it out. And yeah, we have wonderful sources of knowledge to turn to. And now there is also Rita Keller's. I think Gita Ji's book is very concise. And I hear from students that it's difficult to understand and to decipher what she gives a lot of options in her comments of if you have this, you can do that. In Rita Keller's book about Iyengar yoga for menopause, it's with pictures. So you can actually see what Gita Ji meant with taking a wall support, taking a chair support, taking a bench support, and so on. So Rita kind of laid out all of the different kinds and of practices that a woman can practice during menopause and post menopause as well. And I really recommend that as a source of knowledge.
Okay, thank
And
you.
every time I have to emphasize the importance of inversions, inversions, inversions. They really help. And another thing about menopause, um, it's like pregnancy. Pregnancy for a newcomer is different from a pregnancy from a seasoned practitioner. The first trimester, the second, and the third are different. If you're pregnant in winter or in summer, it's different. I mean, the last term, which is most significant heat wise. And for menopause as well, some women suffer from horrible heat waves and some don't. Some feel their joints more and some don't. Some feel irritation in the bladder and so on. So it's really individual. And there are these general guidelines, but in Rita Keller's book, she is really attending to the different symptoms that come with menopause and postmenopause. So I really recommend them as a source.
Oh, okay, that is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So before we take it up, thank you, Aggie. You have answered most of our questions. It's been very nice talking to you. Before we, if you're okay with it, we can open up if audience has any questions. But before that, we request Jawahar sir, since he's here and he can give us some inputs on stress, anxiety, and even trauma that practitioners, especially sometimes new practitioners joining or not even willing to come into yoga.
My experience with my Israeli friends is they find it very difficult to relax. It's always been the case that and it's the environment as such. And I am amazed at the way they have managed to hold on to their own selves and to the society, and be as teachers of Iyengar yoga to benefit the society. It's a tremendous amount of work that our Israeli friends have done, and I salute them for the way they work. There's no doubt about it. And the seriousness with anything that they do it very seriously. This is something also we have to learn from them. We never think of giving up. That is something which is really a marvelous trait among, again, because of their history and what they have been through thousands of years. It has been ingrained in their DNA and genetically also, therefore, they are, I will really say, superior around the world. On our part, yes, we also face the same. We don't face problems, but the people in the border areas, they do face a lot of problems. And our country, bordering Pakistan or bordering Bangladesh, we do also face some problems. We have also taken up assignments like this when the Bhuj earthquake, which took place in Gujarat in the year, I think, 2001. Yeah.
Yes.
So we sent our teams of teachers for a week by rotation to help them again with Guruji sequencing of what they should be doing. Again, like Dr. Agi said, we don't stress at that time on alignment. We just get them to get the movement so that the nerves release. The nerves are tight, muscles are tight. You need to get some movement. So like that. Then again, depending on the age group, give them such things that they are able to manage even at home. Now, of course, most of their homes are destroyed. Like Dr. Aji just said, some teachers, their homes were destroyed. Here also, it was a devastating earthquake. Many homes were destroyed. So in the tent, they were living in the tent, what they could do in the tent with whatever minimal equipment there is. And that is the way we showed them how to work. And of course, there were also people with severe injuries, whatever we could manage by giving them a relief. And then, yes, the other part, the important thing is it's difficult to sleep in such a situation because you don't know what to expect. And especially when you're in a war zone, you don't know what to expect when the air raid siren will blare, and then you're fast asleep and suddenly you have to get up and then run around for shelter, etc. It's a constant stressful condition. But in that stressful condition, as she said, the emotional center, to lift and open it up, heart region, Dhanata, chakra, etc. Because that lifting action, which we explained yesterday in America, the very action of lifting and opening the chest keeps the brain quiet. That is one of the things that people seldom understand why they are asked to lift and open the chest. It's not a question of facilitating your inhalation or taking a deep inhalation. It also has a nervine effect. So every asana that we do has a nervine effect. And the other part we should also understand is to know how to coordinate between the motor nerves and the sensory nerves. Because I had another session yesterday immediately after our morning session. And I had to explain this also to them. So we use the motor nerves more frequently than we use the sensory nerves. For example, just to go into a posture, you need the motor nerve to jump. Once you stay in the posture, then you allow the sensory nerves to understand what is the sensation that's taking place. Understanding that sensation, then you coordinate. But the next time you do the same pose, you just don't use motor nerves. You go into the pose, you use the sensory nerves and motor nerves together so that builds up your efficiency in getting the benefit of the asana. With this is just one thing I will add here. And Dr. Ajay, she can continue with the second question. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So, Dr. Agi, are you okay if we open it up for the audience if they have questions to ask you?
Sure. Sure. And I want to thank Jawahar for his words. You made me very emotional. And I just remembered that this week we had during class a siren because of missiles, and we went into a shelter, and the students told me, when it's over, the class goes on. And I said, I'm not sure. Don't you want to go home to your children? This was a group of mothers, and they said, no, no, we need this. And we went back to class and we finished the practice.
Yeah, and it's so commendable. And I say this seriously, you have to learn from them how to face life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I say this to, and again, I salute them for their spirit. My Jewish friends in Israel,
Yeah.
they are something that people should do case studies on.
Absolutely. So, if anybody from the audience has any questions, we can unmute and you can raise your hand. We can unmute and you can ask questions to Dr. Agi.
I've opened it up for them to unmute if they want to.
Okay, great.
My full name is Agnes. So in India, sometimes it's easier to call me Agni or Agi.
Okay.
Agni is better. The fire element.
That is so appropriate looking at their spirit, the fire element. I think looks like we don't have any questions. Yeah? No one? Okay. Thank you so much. There were so many wow moments while listening to you. Like Jawahar sir said, it really increases our respect for all of you living there and being able to deal with things the way you are. Thank you so much, Nidhi, for organizing this. And thank you so much, Dr. Agi, for agreeing to be a part of this. So we were already inspired by some of your posts. Coincidentally, we were sharing posts in our group about some things that you put up on Facebook. And just right after that, Nidhi brought up doing this talk. So thank you so much.
As they say in Hebrew, Todara.
Thoughts and
Thank you
prayers
very
are
much.
always, yes, always with you and more peace to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for joining.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, before everybody leaves, Nidhi, you want to talk about something that Aggie does? You said she does book readings. I found that very interesting. If anybody else is also interested, Dr. Aggie, is that okay for us to join in?
Yes, of course. It's called Yoga Readers. We started in March last year with the Light on Life. I felt like during the war, everyone in Israel needed light on life. So we began reading, and then there was a request from practitioners abroad to have the sessions in English. So last May, we started the reading of Light on Life together in English. Then we moved to Tree of Yoga, and then we moved to Yoga Jump for Women. And so now it's a global community. The international community is over 1,500 Iyengar yogis reading. And in Israel, it's about 800 Israelis, not only Iyengar practitioners, but all. And we have, the books are just here. We have the book of Gita Ji in Hebrew.
Oh,
Can you see it? So we are reading in Hebrew and in English. And basically, we read at home, everyone in their own pace. And then we meet on Zoom after 2 weeks of reading some chapters, and we discuss it. I did from my doctoral studies the contextualization, because I researched Iyengar yoga for my PhD. And participants give their own insights on how the teachings of Teji reflect in their own practice and in their own lives. And during the 2 weeks, I'm sending a newsletter. And if you want on WhatsApp, there are these inspirational citations from Gitaji's work. And sometimes there is a quiz. And sometimes I give an article. I wrote for one about Bharadvaja, because not everyone knows the stories behind the postures, and one paper about Yoga Kurunta, about what it is, and elaboration. So those who just want to read the book, read the book. And if you want to read extra things, there are extra things on my website as well. And all the recordings are on YouTube. If you cannot attend the Zoom session, it's all on YouTube. It's free. It's my offering to the world. I'm a scholar of yoga. My mother and grandfather are librarians. So my love of books and yoga is combined in this reading community.
I have shared the link on the chat if anyone wishes. So that's the WhatsApp link to join the Yoga Readers group. It's very
Let me send
informative and
the
insightful.
I'll send the link to the website because if you don't want the WhatsApp, what you want the Facebook group or the YouTube or the newsletter, you can do that as well.
Thank you all for joining. Hina, do we end the session?
Yes. And before we end, thank you, Jawar sir, for just agreeing to be a part of this. We just happened to talk, and I'm
Absolutely.
so glad that you joined in. As usual, anytime we speak, there is something enlightening coming up. So,
I don't know. Maybe I have a deep connect with my Jewish friends. It's 20 years since I first visited Israel in 2005, and it was at the time of Sukkot. Most of the Jewish ceremonies, they coincide with our Indian festivals because like us, they also have the lunar calendar. There, it's always seasonal. So if you have some of the Indian dates, you can also find out. And from Kal Nirnay, if you have that calendar, it also coincides with the Jewish festivals. So it's always it's a contact connect that we have since centuries.
Thank you. Bye bye, Aggie. Thank you very much.
thanks, Nidhi. It was really good.
Thank you. Thank you to
Thank you
you
for
as well.
sharing.
Not at all.
Definitely.
Pleasure.
There were so many moments when I felt like goosebumps.
Yes, absolutely. Think about such smaller issues when compared to them. So it's
Exactly.
so much to know and learn from.
Exactly. Exactly.
There are such issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll end the meeting.
Yes, please.